It was on July the 20th, 1969, when two American astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, walked on the moon. I hate to ask how many of y'all remember that, but I won't do that. This was part of the space race between the USA and the USSR, and after several attempts and setbacks, Apollo 11 took off from Kennedy Space Center and traveled 240,000 miles, that's a long ways, in 76 hours, and hundreds of millions of people watched. And it was in color, so they could see what it looks like in color. And anybody remember the words of Neil Armstrong? One small step for man, but one giant step for mankind. And the whole Apollo program, I did some research, cost about $24 billion. In today's money, $100 billion. And a lot of manpower. I mean, if the numbers are correct, hundreds of thousands of people were somehow connected to this. You see, people have been fascinated with space. And through the years, many different things have happened. Even recently, the Solar Dynamics Observatory has been launching semi-autonomous spacecrafts. So they go out there into space and they capture the solar variability, how it's burning up there in space. And how amazing is that? And they bring back data, they bring back images, they bring back so much information that helps us down here on Earth. And then there's also the Solar Orbiter. I don't know about this one. It's a joint mission between the European Space Agency and NASA. And they also, they sent out the Solar Orbiter. And the goal of this machine, this rocket, is to figure out how the sun creates and controls the heliosphere, which is this outer ring, the atmospheric layer of the sun. How does it vary? How does it work? And people study all of these things. By the way, any of y'all watched yesterday? SpaceX? Anybody? Right? 4 non-astronauts went to space and came back. Isn't that crazy? Non-astronauts, people who are not scientists, they're not trained in doing these things, they went into space and came back. Now, I would say you can sign up. You can, if you have a few $1 million. Or Elon Musk really likes you, you can have that. But anyways, how amazing, 3 days in space. But you see, human beings, we are so fascinated by the space. The sun, the moon, the stars, the galaxies. And this morning, we're going to look at some of that and what that means for us. You have your Bibles, go and find Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. This is the 4th day of creation. And as you're finding this passage, here is the main point. Again, ever since the beginning of time, we have been fascinated by space, especially the sun, the moon, the stars. God has given them to us to give us light, to give us heat, to give us time, signs and seasons. They're all coming from these celestial bodies. And they also testify to his benevolence. The Bible tells us that God is such a benevolent Father that he lets his sun shine on the just and the unjust. It's only through Jesus Christ that we can be adopted in his family, but all of us, we can take part of these blessings. Even the evil, they enjoy God's creation. God is so merciful, and the celestial bodies are a reminder how good he is to us. But there's something deeper. You see, the heavens, sun, moon, stars, they even remind us of the glorious resurrection that is coming for us. And we'll see that towards the end. But let's begin. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. Then God said, "Let there be lights." Not in the firmament. Remember, we could talk about it as the expanse, the space, our atmospheric space, the outer space is all part of that, not the word firmament, but the expanse of the heavens, to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth. And it was so. Then God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. It's kind of just thrown in there. God made the sun, moon, and the stars. It again testifies to his power, to his sovereignty, to his majesty. You see, day 4 was a special day. So far, God had made the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, kind of a watery matrix. Then God made space. And then God created land, and he moved the waters around to create seas. And on day 3, he made the plant kingdom. You say, well, there is no sun. Right. The light, God's light, was powering the photosynthesis. And if you believe in 24-hour-a-day creation, no problem, because we're talking about 4 or 5 hours, and then it's done. So perfect. In God's creation, everything is moving according to schedule, and then on day 4, sun, moon, stars. What I want to do in the next few moments is help you realize how glorious they are. Yes, I'm talking about the glory of the sun. Yes, I'm talking about the glory of the moon and the glory of the stars. So, let's begin with the first one, the sun. Typically people say, or you may have heard in school or college or on shows, National Geographic, Discovery, the sun is a star just like the stars out there. It's just a big ball of fire. It's nothing special about it. We just happen to have it in our galaxy, and that is what gives us the energy, the light, the heat that we need. Not true. The sun is not just any old star. It is very, very, very special. It is very different. How is it different? Well, let's begin with the first one. It is big. You say, how big is it? Its volume, hang on to your hats or whatever you have, is over 1 million times that of the earth. The volume of the sun is 1 million times that of the sun, which means this: you can put 1 million of this big blue planet inside the sun. Y'all didn't get it. 1 million of the earths can fit inside the volume of the sun. That is big. In fact, according to some scientists and astronomers, 99% of the solar system, whatever galaxy, it's the sun. It's so vast, it's so big. I asked Ryan to make this for me. So here you have the earth. Here you have, there it is, there's the earth. Here's the sun. And again, this is kind of not drawn to scale. This is simply to help you have something on TV as a reference point. Now, just to kind of give you a little extra about the stars. How big is the sun compared to, say, the Pollux? This is another star. There's a sun. There should not be a dot there, but we put it there so just you can have a reference point. Then you go a little further. The Rigel is compared to the Pollux, compared to the sun, compared to the little earth. I don't know how Ryan did that, put a little dot in the side there. You see, we can go on and on. The point is this: it is massive, and yet there are things out there far, far bigger than our own sun. But let's keep moving. It is big, but it is not too big. You say, what do you mean by not too big? If it were too big, it would swallow up all the inner planets. Can you imagine this massive gravitational force? Anything comes around, it's gone. The entire galaxy would go away because of this massive planet. So it is big, but it's not too big. And it's only the single star compared to mostly multiple star systems. So really blessed. What more? It is bright. You say, well, how bright is the sun? Well, we can only compare sort of with the heat. So let's go with the surface temperature of the sun. Surface temperature is about 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So we can land a man on the moon or person on the moon. We can't land anything on the sun. That's not happening. Now, scientists have even gone further to figure out the core temperature of the sun. You say, how do you do that? Same way, people hold that gun in your head to figure out your temperature. It's so accurate, by the way. So its core temperature is 28 million degrees Fahrenheit inside the core. You say, how do you know that? Because that's how they check, and then they can estimate based on what could it be further in. But if it stopped shining, if it stopped burning, everything would start freezing in a matter of few hours. The atmosphere would condense, everything would liquefy and freeze to entomb the entire earth, says one scientist, with a 30-foot casing of solid air at the temperature of deep space, which is about negative 400 degrees, or 400 degrees below Fahrenheit, Fahrenheit below zero. So if the sun were to stop shining for just a couple of hours, all this would freeze. Life would be inhabitable. Just in a couple of hours, we're gone. So big but not too big. Bright, but ready for this? You should know this by now. It's not too bright. It's like some folks you know. It's not it's not too bright. So what do you mean by it's not too bright? Which means this, compared to the Rigel I put up on the screen, which is about 120,000 times brighter than the sun. If it were that bright, we wouldn't exist. Again, it'll burn us up. Destroy plant life. We'll be blind. Ultraviolet rays, not even a question. We'll be done. It is powerful. You say, how powerful is the sun? In doing a series like this, research study, but also to bring it down to a level that people can understand, we have people who are following this series like no other series we've ever had. People in Africa are logging in, Middle East, even in Europe. Of course, in America, a lot of people watch our broadcast, go to the blog site, we can see all these flags lighting up. Never seen that in our lives, which means people are hungry for this. I don't know who those people are, and yet they're logging in because they want to know this information. It is powerful. It's like a gigantic hydrogen bomb, converting 4 million tons of matter into energy every second. Pretty powerful hydrogen bomb. But something else. It is exceptionally stable star. So when people say, it's just a star, like any other star, not true, because some of the other stars, when astronauts and scientists, when they observe them, what they see is the temperature can fluctuate from 10 degrees to like 25,000 or 10,000, just like that percentage-wise. You can't function like that. So the sun is relatively stable. Yes, you'll have emission, those plasma emissions time to time, but nothing like the 10% to 150,000%. Life cannot exist that way. Also something very interesting, we don't talk about this because some of the questions about climate change, it was global warming, but it's not climate change, right? So here's what some of the scientists and secular scientists are now explaining. The sunspot activity. Not the sunspots on your face, but the sunspots in the sun. You can't just see it with your naked eyes. You have to be very careful. They say the sunspot activity may be responsible for the climate change, if any, rather than the greenhouse gases. So it's not something we're burning down here. It's something that's burning up there. And when it fluctuates, that's why things change down here. And more they're beginning to realize that's what's really happening, if any. How many of y'all been hot lately? Man, it's been hot. Yesterday I was doing a wedding on the front porch, beautiful wedding. I got up there, I was looking great, In less than a minute, it's like somebody took a garden hose and put it on top of my head. It was the most embarrassing thing. I was melting. And the people up in the front were just watching me. I stole the show, but it wasn't good. Very embarrassing, because I was like, would you please stop? I can't. And I mean, I'm dripping everywhere because the sun was setting and it was in perfect angle. And I always wear a jacket in weddings. You know, you never know what people do. They say, oh, it's just jeans and t-shirts. And you get up there and they're wearing a tux. So I always have a jacket. So I had a jacket on, and you get up there and I am burning up. You see, it's an exceptionally stable star. Even though it was then, I was fine. It was okay. It is in the right position. It is in the right position in the galaxy. If it was too close in the inner galaxy, the supernovas will destroy it. It would just explode. I know some of this information is new to you. It is some of this is new to me as well. This is not my field of expertise. What's more, it's only about 6,000 years old if you go by the biblical account. Now, I know we always hear things like, oh, it's millions and billions of years old. Here's the problem. Evolutionists or secular scientists who do not want to go by the biblical account, they try to have it both ways. They say, yes, it's very, very old. Here's the problem. If the earth was 4.5 billion years old, as they claim, then the sun would be 25% brighter today than back then. Did that register? If the earth was 4.5 billion years old, then the sun would be 25% brighter today than back then. It is not. But they're too afraid to abandon the billions of years. So they straddle the fence. Yes, it's billions of years old. And yes, the sun, it's not, because if it was 25% more, we would die. How do you rectify this? They don't. But unless someone like me comes along, by the way, the stats that I'm quoting to you, whether you're a Christian or not, they're still up to date. They may disagree with the conclusions, and that's fine. That's fine. But at least they can say that's true. Also, the earth, if we go for these billions of years, the earth would have been -3 degrees Celsius at that time, which means life could not exist. And even paleontologists tell us that was not the case. Finally, what color is the sun? I usually say yellow, right? It's not yellow. It is white. It's white in color. I mean, that's why when you have snow, you don't have yellow snow. Well, maybe you have yellow snow, but you don't have, snow looks like snow. It's white. When you look at the clouds, it doesn't look like a yellow cloud. It's white. When you look at your paper outside, it looks white. Why? Why is that? Because it's very important. Very important. Because it is all colors mixed but can be separated into a rainbow. And when the sun is low, one scholar said it this way, when the sun is low in the sky, at sunrise or at sunset, it may appear red, orange, or yellow because its outer wavelength or the shorter wavelength, the colors are scattered by the Earth's atmosphere, and only the red, orange, and yellow get through the atmosphere for us to see. That's why when you're driving down the road early in the morning or late in the afternoon or evening time, man, it's so beautiful, and we almost get into a wreck trying to get a picture, right? Because of that effect. But it's white. You see, what I want you to understand here is that the sun is glorious. It's glorious. And when we don't hear these kind of things, we just lump them together and they're all just stars. We just happen to have ours. Not true. There's a design behind it. Things are very specific. If one thing goes out of order, everything will collapse. I want you to remember that word glorious and tuck it away, because we're going to come back to that in just a few moments. What's the second thing that God made? the lesser light to rule the night, which is the moon. Now again, some people try to minimize the special nature of the moon, and they say, planets have moons as well. Some do, some don't. Not true. Planets may have natural satellites, but that doesn't mean they have the moon just like our moon. There's a big difference. Again, you see how we have tried to listen to secular scientists who claim it's all the same. There's nothing special about it. What they're trying to say is that the earth is not special. You are not special. There is no design here. And so we need to remember the moon is special. Starting with this, it has no light of its own. What is the surface of the moon? It's basalt, which is black, hence it shines so well. How many of y'all saw the moon last night? Some did. Beautiful. It was a clear sky. How big is it? Its diameter is 1/4 that of the earth. 1/4. Quarter of the size. Not as big as the earth, definitely not as big as the sun. I mean, how would you sleep at night? When the kids were young, they would always say, "Can you turn the night light on?" So they could go to the bathroom, or they could just see the hallway, the door would just be left open, they could see in the night light. Now we didn't put a big halogen bulb there. There's a tiny little night light, so they can see and feel like everything is okay. Or they can go to the bathroom or get a drink of water or whatever they needed. The moon is God's night light for us. It is special. Quarter of the size. So we can enjoy it. It's beautiful. Of course, the solar eclipse and all those kind of things. We talked about that. It orbits the earth once a month. And that's how we have these regular cycles or phases of the new moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter, all these things. This is because of it moving. That's how we have the months, the time, the seasons. It is special. And something very important, the moon also keeps the oceans clean. If you go to the beach, or have been going to the beach for some time, twice a day, the tide comes in, and the water comes in. You lay everything out. It seems like, man, it's all perfect. All of a sudden, the water gets closer and closer, and before you know it, it happens every time, right? Before you expect it, you're trying to grab things and move back. It's the tide. Now, what exactly is happening? I want you to pay attention to this. As the moon orbits the earth, and the earth orbits the earth pulls on the moon, so does the moon pull on the earth. This is called differential force. It stretches both the earth and the moon along the imaginary line which is connecting the center of the two bodies. I know I'm giving a lot of new information to you, but I want you to keep that in mind. Because unless we understand this, there's a reason for this, and it'll make sense in the end. Unless we are awed by God's creation, sun, but also the moon, we cannot understand what's coming up. So take it all in. Let yourself be stretched. So as the moon is orbiting and the earth is orbiting around each other, the earth is being stretched, the moon also is being stretched along this imaginary line. This results in high tides on both sides of the earth. What we often think, we know about the tides and how it affects, how the moon affects the tides, but what we think is the moon is pulling the water up, right? Folks, if that were the case, when you're in the bathtub, your water should be going up. It doesn't go up, right? Karen's really enjoying this one, right? I mean, the lakes, the ponds, you be out there fishing and the next thing you know, it's all rising. It doesn't happen. Why just the ocean? This is very important, because when you multiply the force of a large body of water like the ocean, it is noticeable. It's messing with you. The sun also causes the tides, but since it is far away, it is only half as powerful. Overall, this orbiting together, exerting this force. The tide only in the oceans goes. And what does it do? What does it do? Cleans the shorelines, pumps oxygen and nutrients into the water. Can you imagine what a giant purification system you would need to filter the water on this planet? But God thought of everything. Isn't that beautiful? The moon, He made the sun, He made the moon. And scientists now are beginning to understand, that's how it all works. And we like to claim that the moon was just this random act which is formed by a chunk breaking off from the earth as the earth was spinning away. Have you heard that before? The Atlantic Ocean. Have you looked at satellite maps? The moon looks nothing like the Atlantic Ocean. And yet we repeat that. It was all here and then it spun off over here and became round. How foolish is that? Or it was captured by the Earth's gravitational pull as it was floating through the solar system. Whoop! And then I was like, I'm going to go around this one now. Or it came out of a dust cloud, or it was a result of an impact, like here's the Earth and the moon pops out and just perfectly starts. When you try to deny God and His creation, the lengths people go. What do we say about the sun? It is glorious. The moon is also glorious. I want you to remember that. And I have simply scratched the surface. There is so much more about the moon and how beautiful it is. But now, the third thing that God made, He just threw it up there. What was that? The stars. He made the stars also. Now, we will talk about the stars later on in another message, but here I'm going to just simply tell you the estimate for the number of stars up there in space. The estimate is this. It's somewhere about 10 to 22nd power. Now, don't try to think, I'm just going to add zeros to this and I get it. No, that's not true. According to a scholar, the number is so vast that even using a computer that could count 1 trillion of these every second, it would take over 300 years to get close to that number. Now, I know I went too fast, but let's try that again. If you could have a computer that could count 1 trillion of these every second, it would take 300 years to even get close to that number. That's just the estimate of how many stars are up there. 300 years, trillion every second. And the nearest one to us is about 26 trillion miles away in light years. It is about 4.3 light years away. And we just take them for granted. And again, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about the stars and how amazing they are and what all that means. But again, just like the sun is glorious, the moon is glorious, the stars are also glorious. Just think about that. Beautiful. And hence, human beings throughout the history of this world have looked up and have been so awed and so amazed by the sun, moon, stars that they have tried to worship them. Ancient Egyptians, they worshiped sun. The sun, they called it the god Khepri or Re or Atum or Amun-Re. They looked upon it as this creator and judge who could see everything and knows everything. So the sun comes out and then it goes down. The goddess Nut swallows the sun. It goes to the nether world, comes back out. And this is a cycle. The sun god is being born again and again. Among the Mesopotamians, the sun was the god Shamash, the god of justice, because he sees everything. So also among the Ugaritic and Canaanite pantheons, they worship the sun, moon, stars. Same thing is found in Sanskrit, the Indian language, ancient Indian language. They call the sun Mitra. Mitra means friend. The sun is our friend. Why is it our friend? Because it gives us warmth, just like a friend should be warm. It gives us sustenance. It also gives us optimism. The night was dark, but wait, the sun came to see us. It's our friend God. Or we can talk about the Aztecs, the Chinese, Japanese, Persians, Romans. They all worship the sun and the moon and the stars. In fact, the Romans named each day of the week after their gods and then matched them up with the sun, moon, and the planets. Hence, the Europeans or the Germanic people, they also adopted the Roman system of weeks. And what is today? Sunday. Sol. Sunday. What is tomorrow? Monday, Moon Day. You see how amazing it is that human beings were so mesmerized. And by the way, we're coming back to that place where it's no longer just for the astronauts and the trained experts, but anybody should be able to go out in space because we're so moved and mesmerized by this. But the children of Israel, the Jewish people, knew right from the book of Genesis, God had told them, do not worship these celestial bodies. They have been made for you, but don't worship them. And God did some miraculous things, like Joshua, who ordered the sun and the moon to stay where they are, as they battled the Amorites. King Hezekiah, when he was sick, he said, God, give me a sign. No, not the sign of the sun going forward, because that can happen. How about the sun goes back, 10 degrees backwards? You see, all these things were done to remind the people that those things are not deities. Nonetheless, God's people worship them. In fact, in 2 Kings chapter 23, when King Josiah was beginning to reform the kingdom, reform the worship, he sent Hilkiah the high priest, listen to what he did, who removed the idolatrous priest whom the kings of Judah had ordered. The kings, descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, had ordered these priests to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places all around Jerusalem. And those who burned incense to Baal, listen, to the sun, to the moon, to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven. In the same temple where Solomon prayed and God's glory filled in, they were worshiping sun and moon and stars. And God put a curse on them. In fact, that's the exile. They lost the land. Because instead of giving God the glory, Romans chapter 1, they were worshiping the creature or the creation. I can go on and on. The point is this: God is God, and He has gloriously made the sun, moon, stars for our benefit. And the same pre-incarnate Jesus who made all these things also said in His incarnation that one day all that's going to fall apart. Listen to Matthew 24, verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. Oh, this is not going to be a solar eclipse. Somehow the energy is gone. Somehow all those plasma emissions are done. All those hydrogen atoms trying to become helium and all that stuff is over. And what's going to happen to the moon? The moon will not give its light because there's no light to reflect. And the stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Remember the diagram? The earth and the sun and all the other bigger stars. Imagine them collapsing and falling and being swallowed up. This is what's going to happen in the tribulation. You see, what we need to understand, again, very important, before we go to the last point, which is very, very essential. We need to always remember when we walk outside, whether in the day or night, this is God's world. Amen. God made all this, and He made it for us out of His goodness. And each one of those celestial bodies, sun, moon, and the trillions upon trillions of stars are glorious, made by His good pleasure. But there's a lesson here that is far richer and deeper for us. You have your Bibles turned to 1 Corinthians chapter 15 as we come to the close of this message. 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verse 12. Your Bible's in the pews, or you can open up in your phones. It's very important for us to look at it. God's Word. Because when a series like this goes on in our mind, everywhere else we will work extra hard to figure things out. The Bible will give me very simple, on the surface, shallow. I like shallow. That day is gone. we have to dig in. We have to dig deep. We have to be stretched. And the past year and a half has proven that the best of the best are not grounded in the Word. We are surface. That old warmed over biscuit, again and again. We're like, oh, that's not going to work. We need a diet. So what we're doing now is going deeper. 1 Corinthians 15, verse 12. Quickly, the context. In the early church, they had doubts about the resurrection. Jesus came, died, rose again in his glorified body. But what's going to happen to us? Well, we're saved, but when we die, that's it. And Paul wrote to them to remind them, no, there is a resurrection coming. Now, the entire chapter 15 is about why that is important and why that will happen. But I want us to just focus on verse 12 and then drop down to verse 38. Now, if Christ is preached that he has been raised from the dead, how do some among you say that there is no resurrection of the dead? Verse 38. But God gives it a body as he pleases. We're talking about the resurrection, our glorious body, according to his good pleasure. And to each seed its own body. I'm not going to share a glory with you. You're not going to share my glory. God's going to, out of his good pleasure and immense resources, each one will have glory, and you will not have to share with anybody. God is that bountiful. Verse 39. All flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of animals, another of fish, another of birds. Means we're all different. Paul is tapping back to the book of Genesis. In some ways, humans and animals sort of similar, and yet we're not beasts, and beasts are not birds, and birds are not fish. We're different, but they're all glorious. Human beings are glorious. Animal kingdom is glorious. Bird kingdom is glorious. Fish are glorious. Verse 40, there are also celestial bodies and terrestrial bodies, but the glory of the celestial is one, and the glory of the terrestrial is another. So there are human bodies like we have. There's glory. But there's also a celestial body that is coming, which will also be glorious, a different kind of glory that is coming. But now pay attention to verse 41. There is one glory of the Son. This is why we spend so much time in the early part of the message to go over why the sun is special, why the moon is special, why the star is special. Don't be dismissive. There's a reason why we need to understand this, because unless we are awed by that glory, albeit God is the creator, we can't get this. And that's why many commentators just skip over this and say, let's move on. Because you got to go to Genesis, our foundation. So there is one glory of the sun, another glory of the moon, another glory of the stars. For one star differs from another star in glory. What is glory? There's something so special about it that cannot be copied, that cannot be replicated, that makes it glorious. And how do they have this glory? God, according to his good pleasure, has made them that way. God has made the sun special. God has made the moon special. God has made the stars special. Verse 42, so also is the resurrection of the dead. The body is sown in corruption. It is raised in incorruption. This is where many of us are just, checking out. We're checking out. We need to rope in our wandering mind. Bring it into submission to Jesus Christ and say, I'm not leaving until I get this. What are we getting? That the body is sown in corruption, it is raised in corruption. In this life, there is that cancer patient. In this life, there is that missionary who's going to die in a foreign land, away from home. In this life, there are people who have prayed and prayed, their prayers never got answered. There is that feeling of why we're just dying and we're just going to go into the dirt and be eaten up by worms, and there's nothing good coming out. It's done. But not if you understand the glory of the stars, the glory of the moon, the glory of the sun, that this body is coming back in glory, in incorruption. Wait, it gets even more. Verse 43, it is sown in dishonor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power. See this power of the sun, the moon, the stars, all different, all unique. When we come back to life, hey, listen, God's going to also raise us in power, in glory. If that doesn't give you hope, all this positivity books, you can get plenty of them at Barnes & Noble's. And if that satisfies you to feel like there's a better day coming, good luck. This is what gives you hope. That this life is not the end, that what you're going through this life is to prepare you for the glory that will follow. That's what we're looking to. Verse 44, it is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. And so it is written, the first man, Adam, became a living being. Adam and Eve, living being. The last Adam, who is he? Jesus Christ, became not just a living being, but a life-giving. Guess who's going to make you and me glorious? Jesus Christ. In this life, it may not be much to look at. In this life, there may be a record. In this life, there may be a history. There may be bad decisions. There may be sickness. There may be still unanswered prayers. But I know this much. There is a life coming in which, according to his good pleasure, he will make us glorious. And that glory will be unique, and none of us will have to share with anybody. When you look at the stars, the sun, the moon, they're not to worship. They are to remind you of what's coming for us. God has written the resurrection in the sky. And people go, I don't know, what's happening? What's happening? What do you think is going to happen? Well, what I think, I don't know, look up. Go stand under the sun and feel the warmth, feel the light. That's what's coming for you. Go see the moon at night, how beautiful and clean and clear it is. And see the stars that are sparkling. Because in this life, when you see people, you only see them as this person and that person and their mistakes and their foibles and their externals, but see them as stars shining in all their glory. Same Jesus who made the sun, moon, stars is going to remake you and me. Amen. That's hope, folks. That is hope. How many of you heard of C.S. Lewis? Hands, very quickly, I'll close with this. C.S. Lewis wrote Mere Christianity and wrote many other books, but in Mere Christianity, he made a statement. He said, each day we are becoming a creature of splendid glory or one of unthinkable horror. I read that years and years ago. And then I came across another book, The Weight of Glory. Listen to what he says in The Weight of Glory. It is a serious thing to live in a society of possible gods and goddesses. Don't misunderstand. He's not saying we're gods and goddesses, but pay attention to what is coming. To remember that the dullest and most uninteresting person you talk to may one day become a creature, which, if you saw it now, you would be strongly tempted to worship. Or else a horror and a corruption such as you now meet, if at all, only in a nightmare. Translated, either we're going to be as glorious as the sun, moon, stars, or the worst horrific creature you've ever seen in a horrible nightmare. There is a resurrection to life and death. There is a resurrection to glory and judgment. Everybody is coming back. Either we'll be glorious or become a nightmare. Now listen to what he says. All day long we are in some degree helping each other to come to one or other of these destinations. It is in the light of these overwhelming possibilities, it is with the awe and the circumspection proper to them that we should conduct all our dealings with one another. All friendships, all loves, all play, all politics. There are no ordinary people. That guy on the side of the street, that girl at the checkout counter, that neighbor, that family member, that church member, there are no ordinary people. You have never met a mere mortal. Nations, cultures, arts, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is to ours as the life of a gnat. But it is immortals whom we joke with, work with, marry, snub, and exploit, immortal horrors or everlasting splendors. Wow. Because that's where we're headed. Through Jesus Christ, everlasting splendors. Without him, terrible horrors. How do you see people? When you see the sun, moon, stars, if you're tempted to worship them, we're starting on the ground level here. We got to work with you and tell you God is God and not the creation. If you're up there going, man, it's great to be reminded God is faithful. There's a new day. Okay, good. We're kind of moving up a little bit. That's good. Man, there is a tribulation coming and the sun, moon, stars will all fall apart. Okay, you're seeing God's plan coming up. Let's go a little further out. Let's go with Paul in 1 Corinthians 15. There's the glory of the sun, the glory of the moon, the glory of the stars. And every star is different. Every person will have either glory or horror. Oh, so when I walk out and see this, it should remind me that's where we're headed. And I can help people either become glorious or horrific. When you get deeper in God's word, that's when you realize we don't know enough. There's so much we still have to learn. And today, if you do not know Jesus, please listen, if you do not know Jesus Christ, you're the nicest person, kindest person, sweetest person, most handsome, beautiful, whatever you are going to be a nightmare. But receiving Jesus Christ as your Savior, your glory will compete with the glory of the sun, the moon, and the stars. All because of Jesus Christ, the life-giving Spirit.